The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord.
On that day, as evening drew on, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us cross to the other side." Leaving the crowd, they took Jesus with him in the boat just as he was. The other boats were with him. A violent squall came up and waves were breaking over that boat, so that it was already filling up. Jesus was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. They woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, "Quiet, be still." The wind ceased, and there was great calm. Then he asked them, "Why are you terrified? Do you not yet have faith?" They were filled with awe and said to one another, "Who then is this who even the wind and sea obey?" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So again, I am grateful to Father Bishop Peter and the Propagation of the Faith Office here in the Diocese of Manchester to again welcome my community here to St. Michael's, to tease you into a deeper sense of mission. Again, I'm with the Xaverian Missionaries, a small group here in the United States. We're about 600 worldwide who work specifically in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. But I'm not the only missionary in this room. Every one of us who has taken part in the sacrament of baptism is just as much a missionary as I. It's one of the insights of the Vatican II Council that through baptism, each and every one of us are baptized. And we're catechized, where we celebrate our sacraments in order to then witness and mission beyond the community. That wasn't so clear years ago. In fact, there's a very practical image to underline that. Probably when this church was first built, the baptismal fonts were not here. I think they were in that alcove over there, almost like a sidebar or a side event. I know I was baptized in the corridor of my parish down in Massachusetts, which was somewhere between the church and the sacristy. There was an alcove and a little baptismal font, and that's where we were baptized. Today, just like in your church, the baptismal font is front and center, so that when we come in the church and see it, we're reminded this is where it starts, and we're called to mission. So my being here this weekend is to kind of remind you of that, as well as to tease you into the mission that is ours, so that we can encourage your support and your solidarity with the work that we do. I had the opportunity of being in Sierra Leone for 12 years, so my experience will color a little bit of this reflection. I'd like to ground my thoughts in what we heard in the readings today because they were very powerful, especially for people who are in a pickle, people who are burdened by fears or persecutions or harsh events in their lives. Remember, these readings, particularly the New Testament readings, were written during a heavy persecution of the early Christian community. So these readings encourage them to see beyond that present moment of great harm. And we have been experiencing for the past year a lot of harm due to this pandemic, as well as the divisiveness in our society and the world, things that kind of caught us with new fears and trepidations. Where is God in all of that? Job, in the first reading, had that question. He wasn't so much protesting or arguing with God, but before today's little piece of that first reading, he was engaging his friends in the discussion about where is God in all of this? Because as you know, Job was filled with great trepidation and brokenness. Lost his family, lost all of his possessions. God, in today's reading, reminds him God is the one who sets the limits of the sea and the sky. God is creator. God is in charge. The same thing with the gospel reading. Here the disciples are inviting Jesus to join them as they cross the lake. And any of you who are fishermen know in lakes that are very shallow, if a storm comes up, the waves can be more destructive than in a deeper lake. And that's what happened in the Lake of Galilee as the boat is being swamped in the middle of the night, and he's asleep. And they wake him, and they say, "Aren't you concerned about our safety?" And he stills the wind and calms the sea, and they're in awe of his power. And again, it's a message to that early Christian community, and it's a message to us that when we find ourselves in desperate times, remember, it's God's mission. It's God's creation. And he will see us through. That's the image that I found very helpful, not only when I was in my own experience of mission in Sierra Leone, but also as I recall many of the other situations of my brothers who find themselves in places like the Democratic Republic of Congo, who for the past few weeks have been terrified by an active volcano that's harassing the city of Goma, displacing hundreds of thousands of people, losing everything. And we heard in some of the reports from our brothers that, thank God, our compound is a little bit far from the volcano, but they've been welcoming so many of those who are displaced in the compound and providing other services to just keep them alive. And the fact that they are there, they didn't move, becomes a witness of God's presence to these people who are in the soup. When I was in Sierra Leone, especially this last assignment in the 90s, when there was a terrible civil unrest, 25% of the population had moved outside of the country for safety, and another 25% of the population were displaced internally, where every NGO, international business representative, diplomatic corps, bank officials, all left the country. We stayed. I know people that I was close to encouraged me, this is not your war. Please go so you're safe. And I said to them, well, it's like a marriage. There are good times and bad times. This is a challenging time. We're going to stay together. Witnessing the fact that they are not abandoned by God. And many people told us that. Because we stayed, they realized that God himself wasn't abandoning them in their time of great need and peril. We just got a report about a month ago of one of our confreres who died quite young. He was only in his early 60s. But for the past 20 years, he was working with what we call the Muchi, the untouchables in Bangladesh, where ordinary society doesn't give them a chance to live, be educated. But Father Ricardo did. And he gathered especially many of the children of these people and offered them an opportunity for education and life. And just recently we received pictures of how grateful these young people were, decorating his grave with candles every day, just as a way of saying thank you. Again, because Ricardo witnessed that even these people that society says are not worth having any value, have dignity. And the stories go on. I left a few copies of our newsletter around. If you find them, pick one up, because it has more stories from the work that we do that, again, just like the God of Job or the Jesus of the gospel today, helps other people who, more often than not, are marginalized by society, know that they have a value. And that's your mission too, right here in Exeter. How do you reach out to people who are either homeless or have their livelihood threatened or are of a different faith tradition? One of the missions of the 21st century is not only reconciliation of our divisiveness, but also a reaching out to people of other faiths. We see that with Pope Francis more and more. Some of his dialogues with some very high-level imams and other heads of other religions. Because more often than not, we share more than we differ. And even Jesus invites us to find the oneness that we share with one another. Some of the differences are important. I don't want to diminish those differences, but they don't overshadow what we share. In fact, when I was in charge of our students in Chicago, I would send them to a particular parish, St. Pascal's in the southwest quadrant of the city, where in that parish bounds was the largest mosque in the area. And both the women's group of the parish had a weekly dialogue with the women's group of the mosque, and the youth group also worked together in service projects for the poor, both the Muslim youth and the Catholic youth. And then after they did those projects, they would talk about what they learned from that experience, as well as what they shared as a call to service, both from our Christian tradition as well as from their Islamic tradition. And they did this pre-September 11th, so that when September 11th happened, and many were blaming the Muslim community, the Catholic community of St. Pascal's was able to help protect the mosque and many of those members of the mosque community. A powerful image that can happen anywhere of Catholics engaged in outreach. Again, witnessing who's in charge here. It's God who's in charge. So this morning I'm here actually to appeal to you for 4 things. The first is simply what we're doing now, praying together to deepen our own awareness of what mission is and what God calls us and how God calls us to engage in his mission. So if in the course of my homily you remember someone who has been in mission that you know or that you're presently communicating with and supporting, we pray for them through you, as well as you praying for my brothers and sisters in the Xaverian community by my presence here. That's crucial. I could feel the prayers of people like yourselves when I was in some very compromising situations, life-threatening situations in Sierra Leone in the 90s. It is real. The second thing is, of course, financial support. So the second collection today will be for the work of the Xaverian Missionaries in all the many places that we serve, preparing people for mission, educating them, sending them and supporting them overseas, and caring for our senior priests who have returned and who are aged. That's what I'm doing now in Holliston. I'm the head of a community that is really our retirement community as well as our shrine. And thirdly, I'm asking for moral support, because sometimes in various publications you might hear an article or read an article or hear a podcast of a missionary who may sound a little critical of U.S. and policies. Give them a second hearing. Don't write them off. Because we come from the same place you come from. Let me leave you with a little proverb that helps me understand that. People take stands on issues from where they sit. Where are you sitting now? And why? You're sitting here in St. Michael's Church. On a beautiful day, we could be along the seashore, we could be heading up to the mountains, or just staying home and enjoying a leisurely Sunday morning. But you haven't. You've come here around God's Word, and because of where we sit, we take stands on issues, not only here in the United States, but beyond. Issues of right to life, issues of capital punishment, issues of immigration. The list is long, but we know where we stand because we know where we sit, whether it's in private prayer or public prayer. That strengthens us for what we witness and stand for. And the same thing for those of us who've worked overseas, who see the world from the underside. My experience working with young people both in high school and college who, truth be told, when they graduate, will not have the opportunities of work and support because of terrible economic and political put-downs and oppression that keep people poor. Or farmers who can't control the control the price of their crops because the futures market is in Chicago, and they're the ones who determine what the price of rice is going to be in Sierra Leone. Totally unfair. So much so that it's caused many farmers to withdraw from farming. Just a couple of examples. And that's why we take stands on issues from where we sit. Lastly, it's a real challenge for each and every one of you. Again, at the beginning I said all of us are missioners. And I'm making a plea for you maybe to consider being personally involved in an overseas mission experience. 50% of the people from the United States who are leaving to go for a month, a year, 2 years in mission are lay people, phenomenally. We still need priests, brothers, and sisters, for sure. If you feel the Spirit calling you to that, please consider. But also consider the Spirit inviting young people just out of college, or people just about to retire, or people who want to take a pause in their career and give a year of service. There are many opportunities for you to engage in that, and it's wonderful. And when you return to St. Michael's, you will have that same kind of perspective that many of us who've been overseas have, that can enrich your local church, challenging this community to be more engaged in an authentic mission, even beginning here. So those are the opportunities for you that I present this morning. Because again, in the midst of this storm, whatever the storm is that's going on in our lives or your lives, Jesus is present. Jesus makes it a new creation for us, as the second reading says, because we are urged, we are driven by his love to do his mission, not ours. And it's wonderful. Thank you.